to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Rafael Mariano Grossi, if he is ready.
I am, Mr. President. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Grossi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much, Mr. President. An attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates has threatened the nuclear safety in the United Arab Emirates. A drone strike on the morning of Sunday, May 17, caused a fire in an electrical generator located outside the inner site perimeter of the plant. Radiation levels at the nuclear power plant remain normal and no injuries were reported. The use of emergency diesel generators to provide power to the nuclear power plant Unit 3 was necessary, but off-site power has since been restored. An important step for nuclear safety. Not long after the attack, I spoke on the phone with His Highness Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the UAE, assuring him of the IAEA's support. Over the past few days, I have also been in contact with leaders throughout the Gulf region, and I can see the unease and great concern. I have been discussing how the IAEA can offer assistance. Since last year, the IAEA has been gathering information as well as analyzing and evaluating emergency preparedness and response capacities. I will be traveling to the Gulf soon to continue this important joint work. The IAEA will continue providing guidance and training to competent authorities and first responders in areas including radiological impact, emergency protective measures for the public and workers, international emergency arrangements, emergency response plans, and provision of equipment and services to support emergency response. We stand ready, if necessary, to deploy the agency's nuclear safety and security experts to support nuclear safety efforts on the ground, in accordance with the IAEA's mandate. We have done this in other war theaters with good results. The IAEA's Incident and Emergency Center in Vienna is operating 24/7, following the situation closely, and is in constant contact with the UAE's authorities. The situation, Mr. President, is of grave concern. This is a nuclear site in the Middle East where the consequences of an attack could be most serious. It is an operating nuclear power plant, and as such, it hosts thousands of kilograms of nuclear material in the core of the reactors, fresh and spent fuel. I want to make it absolutely and completely clear. In case of an attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant, a direct hit could result in a very high release of radioactivity to the environment. A hit that disabled the lines supplying electrical power to the plant could increase the likelihood of its reactors' cores melting, which could result in a high release of radioactivity. In their worst cases, both scenarios would necessitate protective actions, such as evacuations and sheltering of the population, or the need to take stable iodine, with the reach extending to distances from a few to several hundred kilometers. Radiation monitoring would need to cover distances of several hundred kilometers, and food restrictions may need to be implemented. As I stated several times, including to this Council, attacks on nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes are unacceptable. This is consistent with the IAEA General Conference's resolutions. Attacks are even more dangerous when they are against operating nuclear power plants, like Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Bushehr nuclear power plant, Baraka nuclear power plant, or any other nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plants are protected under international humanitarian law. I reiterate my calls for parties in all conflicts to respect the 7 indispensable pillars for ensuring nuclear safety and security, which I articulated both at the IAEA's Board of Governors and this Council. I again, as I did in June 2025, when I last briefed this chamber, call on maximum restraint. Military activity on NPPs and other nuclear facilities carry undeniable risks. I would like to commend the authorities of the UAE for providing the IAEA with timely and regular technical information about affected nuclear facilities and their respective sites. Immediate engagement with the IAEA's Incident and Emergency Center is of the essence. Our teams are working around the clock. They are following the developments on the ground, and they are ready to deploy. I will continue to provide public updates about the impact of this conflict on nuclear sites and the possible health and environmental consequences, while remaining in permanent consultations with the governments in the region. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, it is clear that the only sustainable path forward to peace, stability, and cooperation is one grounded in dialogue and diplomacy. The National Atomic Energy Agency, as the international technical institution entrusted with overseeing the peaceful use of nuclear energy, remains a vital forum for this dialogue, especially now. There is a legitimate expectation of an overall diplomatic agreement adequately and robustly verified by the IAEA. Agreements without verification of the exclusively peaceful use of the nuclear material and facilities do not help. Engagement without prompt international evaluation and support can rapidly turn into regional crisis. In closing, Mr. President, I would like to ensure the Security Council that the IAEA will continue to do everything within its mandate to ensure the safety and security of nuclear facilities, especially those most at risk due to conflict, wherever it may take place. Thank you very much.
Well, guys.
I thank Mr. Grossi for the briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
Mr. President, at the outset, the Kingdom of Bahrain would like to thank the delegation of the People's Republic of China, President of the Council in this month, for promptly responding to holding this meeting. We would also like to thank Mr. Grossi, Director General of the IAEA, for his important briefing on targeting the Baraka nuclear power plant, the peaceful nuclear power plant in the UAE, and the effect of this attack on nuclear safety and security. We welcome the participation of the permanent representative of the brotherly UAE in today's meeting. We would also like to express our surprise and our deep regret over this contradiction dominating the international scene at this stage. Attacks targeting civilian infrastructure, energy facilities, and peaceful nuclear facilities in our region coincide with holding the NPT review conference. There are increasing demands to respect the standards of nuclear safety and security by some delegations. However, the reality is painful and paints a different picture. Dangerous escalatory practices persist and are not confined to regional tension, the escalation of regional tension. They go as far as supporting proxies that target critical infrastructures in our countries. There is a concerning gap between political statements and actual practices on the ground, and that raises serious concerns regarding the credibility of international commitments in this field. This contradiction between political discourse and actions on the ground by some of the delegation participating in the conference undermines confidence, undermines trust, and undermines efforts aiming at enhancing the non-proliferation regime. The protection of peaceful nuclear facilities is not an option. It is a collective international responsibility that requires a clear and decisive stance by the Council and the international community. Mr. President, the Kingdom of Bahrain condemned in the strongest terms the attacks by drones that targeted the Baraka nuclear power plant in the UAE on the 17th of May 2026. This attack is a serious and unjustified escalation. It is a serious and flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and a serious violation of the Security Council Resolution 2817. It is also a threat, a direct threat to the principles of nuclear safety and security in peaceful nuclear power plants. According to the statement by competent authorities in the UAE, 2 drones were intercepted. The third drone struck an electric generator outside the inner perimeter of the Baraka power plant. This ignited a fire that was controlled, and this did not affect the reactors and the levels of radiation safety. The Kingdom of Bahrain commends the efficiency by the UAE and its transparency in informing the IAEA and the GCC countries and informing us of any irregular levels of radiation. Mr. President, in light of these repercussions, we stress that the recovery period, now after 3 months since the beginning of these attacks, there are efforts by our courageous armed forces and civil defense agencies. On the 5th of April 2026, the Gulf Company for Petrochemicals was targeted in the kingdom, especially the ammonium tanker. This was a dangerous attack. Were it not for the quick measures taken by the competent authorities in the UAE and the Kingdom of Bahrain, there would have been radiation leakage, a chemical leakage that would have given rise to a widespread humanitarian disasters affecting kilometers and kilometers and affecting directly the lives of civilians in this area. Mr. President, since the 28th of February 2026, these attacks have not been dispersed incidents. They have become a systematic policy based on incremental escalation. They started with ballistic missile and drone attacks and imposed on affected countries in the region a serious security reality. They turned into dangerous chemical attacks targeting chemical and nuclear power plants. The GCC countries, namely the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the State of Kuwait, the State of the UAE, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and my country, the Kingdom of Bahrain, all these countries have been subjected to a series of attacks targeting critical infrastructure and civilian infrastructure. These attacks also threatened maritime corridors and navigation freedom. These repeated attacks in such an escalatory way reflect a deliberate approach that seeks to undermine stability and undermine the confidence in the security of the region. This is a flagrant violation of international law, especially international humanitarian law and Security Council Resolution 2817. The repercussions of these serious attacks have not been confined to human and material casualties, have not only caused disruptions in economic activities. They're now causing a continuous state of concern and uncertainty in the region and the world. Global supply chains and global energy supplies have become hostage to policies based on imprudence and lack any responsible action. The continued attacks against critical infrastructure reflects this deliberate approach. It's not a passing threat. It is a track that undermines the basis of regional and international security. It requires a decisive, clear international stance that puts an end to these violations and shows that the security, sovereignty, and the integrity of the global economy should not be targeted. Mr. President, the Kingdom of Bahrain stresses its full and firm solidarity with the UAE. The security of the UAE is part and parcel of the security of the GCC countries. We condemn with the strongest terms attacks by drones that targeted the brotherly Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on Sunday, the 17th of May, 2026. The Kingdom stresses that these attacks are part of a repeated pattern of threats that target civilian infrastructure, energy installations, and vital maritime corridors. This shows that these threats are expanding and are becoming a threat to the security and stability of the region. The Kingdom of Bahrain reaffirms our inalienable right to self-defense, individually or collectively, under Article 51 of the Charter. We call for an immediate halt of any hostile actions or direct or indirect threat against the countries of the region. We call for refraining from supporting or empowering proxies that target civilians and critical infrastructure. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain calls upon the Security Council to uphold its responsibilities and to take a decisive and clear stance towards this escalation to ensure the protection of civilian infrastructure and peaceful nuclear infrastructure, to prevent the recurrence of those attacks and to maintain international and regional peace and security. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greece is deeply alarmed by the reported attack in the vicinity of the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. Any strike affecting or endangering a nuclear facility constitutes an extremely serious escalation, with potentially nefarious consequences for civilian populations, regional security, the environment, energy security, and international peace and security more broadly. We unequivocally condemn this dangerous incident and express our full solidarity with the UAE. We reiterate that the United Arab Emirates did not seek to be drawn into this conflict and should therefore not face attacks. Nuclear installations, like all critical civilian infrastructure, must never be targeted, threatened, or exposed to military risk. Attacks on or near such facilities, which are operating solely for civilian purposes, are unacceptable, violate international law, and run directly counter to the obligation to protect civilians. This incident comes at a time of heightened regional volatility, when the risk of miscalculation is already dangerously high. It therefore underlines the urgent need for all parties to exercise maximum restraint, refrain from further escalatory action, and take immediate steps towards de-escalation. The region cannot afford a wider confrontation, nor can the international community ignore the risks created by attacks on civilian and energy infrastructure. Greece reiterates its firm attachment to the UN Charter, international law, and the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-use of force. We call for full respect for these principles and for the immediate cessation of any actions that destabilize the region, endanger civilians, or threaten critical infrastructure in countries that should not be drawn into further escalation. The violation of territorial integrity is absolutely unacceptable. At the same time, nuclear safety and security must remain an absolute priority. The protection of nuclear facilities is not only a national responsibility, it is a matter of international concern. Any military activity that risks compromising the safety or integrity of such installations must be avoided. In this regard, sustained cooperation with the IAEA and full respect for all the relevant safeguards and nuclear safety obligations are indispensable. Mr. President, there is no military solution to the current crisis. The only sustainable path is one of restraint, dialogue, and diplomacy, in accordance with the international law and the UN Charter. Greece therefore calls on all parties to preserve the space for diplomatic efforts, avoid further provocation, and work towards a peaceful resolution that addresses legitimate security concerns while preventing further escalation. At this critical juncture, the Security Council must send a clear and united message. Attacks on or near nuclear facilities are unacceptable. Civilians and critical infrastructure must be protected. Freedom of navigation must be preserved, and de-escalation and dialogue must prevail to ensure regional stability and the regime of non-proliferation. I thank you.
感谢
I thank the representative of Greece for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
I didn't get you. I'll work on my Mandarin. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Director General, for your remarks, and thank you to my colleagues in Bahrain for calling this emergency meeting. Colleagues, let's be very clear. We should truly, collectively, as a global community, be thankful to God that today is not a very different meeting after this attack. This very well could have been an attack where we are discussing the meltdown of a nuclear reactor and the untold and unprecedented humanitarian and environmental crisis that would have caused. One can only think if that reactor's power plant, which was hit, was no longer able to cool the plant in a sufficient way, and you had a meltdown across the Middle East. But one can only wonder if this was Iran's objective, as it sent drone strikes on to the Barakah nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. And we have to ask ourselves, what responsible, what sane nation, either directly or indirectly through proxies, sends drone attacks into an active and ongoing nuclear power plant? But let's be honest, this is a little different from Iran's decades-long pursuit, in violation of many Security Council resolutions, of a nuclear weapon. And it's only by luck and the grace of God that this plant, which provides up to a quarter of the UAE's energy needs, continues to operate, and thankfully radiation levels remain normal. But again, what is the world left to believe? That if Iran, I guess, can't achieve a nuclear weapon, and it can't use it as it's threatened over and over again on its neighbors, that it's now going to find a clever and dangerous way to weaponize a nuclear power plant? Is that what we're left to believe? I struggle to come to any other conclusion. I have to say clearly the United States condemns Iran's outrageous and acceptable attacks in the strongest possible terms. And by the way, we should make note that the agreements and the way the UAE has abided by the agreements that it has subjected itself to are considered the gold standard of nuclear agreements, the gold standard of nuclear nonproliferation, the abiding by IAEA safeguards, the no domestic enrichment of fuel, and the actual peaceful use of nuclear power in the Middle East. Contrast that with the decades of meetings we've had in this chamber around Iran's evasion of IAEA safeguards, pushing back on appropriate inspections, and the conflict that we find ourselves in today. Well, President Trump and the United States have been second-guessed over and over again in this conflict, but I think this makes it clear yet again that the President is taking the actions necessary to safeguard a secure and safer future for the world. What we should be focused on is a nation that just attacked a nuclear power plant in a neighboring country. The UN Security Council, colleagues, cannot be a place for strongly worded statements and hand-wringing. Just minutes before this council meeting, the United Arab Emirates stated they intercepted 6 more attack drones just in the past 48 hours. Saudi Arabia, as we've noted already, had a similar recent experience. Contrast all of this with Resolution 2817, where this council demanded that Iran and its proxies immediately cease attacks, provocations, and threats against its neighbors. The resolution garnered 136 co-sponsors, a near unanimous global outcry for Iran to stop its flagrant violations of international law, stop attacks on shipping, stop minings of international waters, stop the illegal tolling, stop attacking the airports, resorts, and neighborhoods of its neighboring states. And yet, 2 months later, we find Iran's dictatorship now in shambles. We find the U.S. Treasury Department enacting new sanctions in place. These are addition to the snapback sanctions that are already in place. They're running out of money and their economy's in shambles. But rather than embrace some peaceful new approach, the Iranian military is engaging in repeated and reckless attacks now on civilian power infrastructure, and clings to a nuclear weapons strategy that risks plunging the world into darkness. We cannot tolerate it. We will not tolerate it. We will continue to fight in this council and in every appropriate diplomatic forum for Iran to abide by its obligations in international law. We have introduced, again, we have tabled an additional resolution focused on those violations of basic freedoms of navigation that the entire world's economies depend upon. This attack is only the latest example of the dangerous and destabilizing activities that have come to define this regime, that this regime is now known for around the world. And it is time for every nation, everyone in this council, to call out this behavior. The regime has threatened global peace for 47 years, from the Houthis to Hezbollah to Hamas to the militias in Iraq, and has brought nothing but misery and bloodshed in the Middle East and beyond. And I truly hope that this body will take the opportunities before it to put an end to it. So we will continue to condemn Iran's actions. We will demand it cease its attacks. I hope and pray this council will act. The greatest irony here is that as the Iranians recklessly sought to produce nuclear weapons, the U.S. took action to stop it, and now out of sheer desperation and true recklessness, they're now weaponizing the peaceful nuclear power of a neighbor. This is precisely why the United States has said Iran can never have a nuclear bomb, and today is a reminder of that danger. I thank you, colleagues.
感谢。
I thank the representative of the U.S. for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much to you, President. I also wish to thank Director Rafael Grossi for the information provided today. The recent events seen in the area immediately surrounding nuclear facilities for peaceful purposes, particularly the attack on an electric generator in the area surrounding the Baraka plant, stand as a source of grave concern for the international community. They demand that the Council pay the highest degree of attention to them, particularly in the current context of tensions and confrontation in the Middle East. Nuclear facilities are highly sensitive critical infrastructure. Any impact on their physical integrity and their electric power supply systems can unleash colossal humanitarian environmental consequences that are transboundary in nature. Precisely for this reason, the International Atomic Energy Agency, whose role and support in these circumstances is vital, has reiterated time and time again that any military action in the area immediately surrounding nuclear facilities constitutes an unacceptable risk and must be avoided. With this in mind, Colombia believes it fundamental to reaffirm the 7 indispensable pillars that the IAEA set forth in terms of preserving nuclear safety and security in context of armed conflict. These pillars are minimal conditions that must be preserved to prevent risks whose consequences are potentially catastrophic. This meeting is all the more relevant at a time when the international community is gathering to consider the NPT. One of the issues that is of pivotal importance in these discussions has been concern around attacks or threats of attacks against peaceful nuclear facilities and the risks they pose to human life, the environment and international security. President, in view of the worsening security situation across the region, Colombia reiterates that attacks against energy infrastructure, critical civilian facilities and structures on which people depend cannot be normalized, neither can they become part of a conflict, particularly when such attacks compromise the safety of facilities and their access to crucial goods and services. For this reason, it is vital to shed full light on the circumstances of this incident on the basis of verifiable information. Accountability is vital for attacks on civilian infrastructure, as well as those on essential infrastructure that have been affecting the region. We wish to express our solidarity with the countries affected by the worsening security situation in the Middle East. We issue an urgent appeal for de-escalation, a cessation of hostilities, and for the avoidance of any and all actions that could sow further instability in the region. We value the diplomatic and mediation efforts underway, and we hope those efforts will allow us to move towards a lasting peace for the Middle East, one which stringently respects international law and the United Nations Charter. Thank you.
感谢哥伦比亚。
I thank the representative of Colombia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we wish to thank the Director General of the IAEA, Mr. Rafael Grossi, for his briefing. According to information that has been circulating on the 17th of May as a result of a drone, fire was ignited at a electricity generator which was located outside the inner perimeter of the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. According to the UAE Ministry of Defense, the drone entered the airspace of the country from Iraqi territory, according to the IAEA, as was mentioned today by Mr. Grossi. Following the attack, electricity provision to one of the power units, the number 3 unit, was restored thanks to diesel generators. Fortunately, the radiation level remains at a normal level, and yet this fact by no means diminishes the dangerous nature of this incident. Russia's position on nuclear safety and security is principled and consistent in nature. Attacks targeting peaceful nuclear facilities in any country of the world, all the more so those who are under IAEA safeguards, are categorically unacceptable. Such actions constitute violations of international law, international humanitarian law, specialized conventions, and the norms for nuclear safety standards. They must not be carried out under any circumstances. Against this backdrop, our country categorically condemns the actions of those who carried out the strike targeting the UAE, the plant on the territory of the UAE, thereby generating risks of escalation, which are liable to further undermine regional and global security. In the context of the current situation in the Middle East, our country repeatedly reaffirmed our commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states in the region, barring none, including the UAE. We view as unacceptable strikes targeting civilian infrastructure of the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council. And if this infrastructure is linked to nuclear facilities, as is the case with the incident under consideration today, such actions are all the more alarming. We trust that all stakeholders will do everything necessary to avoid a recurrence of such a dangerous incident, including the creation of security threats to the Baraka plant. Mr. President, unfortunately, the incident under discussion today is far from the first instance of an attack targeting a peaceful nuclear facility in the context of the current escalation in the Middle East. Back in June 2025, the U.S. and Israel carried out direct strikes targeting facilities and research centers on Iranian soil in Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan, and Arak. However, this situation became all the more perilous in the wake of February 28, 2026, with the start of the U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran. In recent months, beyond the majority of the above-mentioned facilities, strikes also targeted the Bushehr plant, which was both built and made operational with the direct participation of the Russian Federation, and this did not happen once, nor did it happen twice. Attacks in direct proximity of it, the power unit operating there, took place on the 17th, the 14th, the 27th of March, as well as on the 4th of April. The most recent attack resulted in tragedy. A security officer, an Iranian citizen, died. Beyond that, from the 10th of March to the 1st of April, a host of missile strikes targeted satellite cities of the station and their vicinity. All of these illegal and reckless actions not only have placed the entire Middle East region on the verge of nuclear and radiological catastrophe, but they also pose threats to the safety, the lives, and the health of Russian specialists working in that facility, as well as their families. As a result, the Rosatom Corporation and Russian Foreign Service personnel in Iran had to conduct an exceedingly difficult operation to evacuate our country's citizens from the station that was under fire. The Russian Federation repeatedly drew attention to strikes targeting the Bushehr plant, including in relevant Russian Foreign Ministry statements. We note that that our assessment about that the assessment was also voiced by Director General of the IAEA. Mr. Grossi in particular noted deep concern in connection with attacks targeting the operating station. Against this backdrop, we are genuinely bewildered at the fact that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who yesterday noted his deep alarm at the strikes in the vicinity of Baraka, before then never deemed it necessary to react to the numerous attacks targeting the Bushehr plant. Such double standards and attempts to cover up egregious and exceedingly dangerous violations of international law, particularly in such a sensitive matter, are categorically unacceptable. Incidentally, this also fully applies to the criminal attacks by the Kiev regime targeting Russian peaceful nuclear facilities, the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. On the 27th of April, as a result of such an act by the Ukrainian Armed Forces, one staff member died. And on the 16th of March, the territory of the facility was struck by a Ukrainian drone, which fortunately did not detonate. In subsequent days, there were also other attempts targeting the Zaporozhye power plant. It compels us to note that these incidents, unlike the attack on the Baraka plant, were not met with a due reaction from the UN Secretariat and the IAEA. And this is particularly surprising, the fact that the Zaporozhye power plant has agency experts there who have an opportunity to witness firsthand the Ukrainian attacks and the consequences thereof. We demand that the colleagues from the IAEA Secretariat provide categorical assessments of such criminal acts by Kiev and to issue stringent warnings addressed to those countries who continue to stoke military escalation around Iran and threaten further attacks targeting its peaceful nuclear facilities. The international community has an obligation not to allow the routinization, these actions to become routine in any part of the world, either in the Middle East or in Europe, and to compel hot heads to stop jeopardizing the lives of millions of people. The leadership of the specialized international organizations need to assume a principled position on this matter and to send clear messages about the inadmissibility of such actions. Double standards and selective approaches by them when it comes to matters of nuclear safety and security are unacceptable, and they should not be subject to any political considerations. It is absolutely clear, Mr. President, that today we would not have had to discuss the threats of nuclear safety and security and radiological security which are emerging in the Middle East had it not been for the U.S. and Israel's military misadventure targeting Iran. And it is indeed Washington and West Jerusalem who bear responsibility for the current regional escalation. In this context, we cannot but note the previously heard threats about the complete destruction of the Iranian energy system, which are giving rise to even more concern against the backdrop of the hawkish rhetoric which has been rekindled in recent days. I wish to stress that the only way to bring an end to escalation and to eliminate the negative repercussions thereof, including from the standpoint of nuclear safety and security, is to eradicate the root causes of conflict. We call upon the parties to abandon the language of threats and the raising of stakes and to immediately revert back to the path of political, diplomatic settlement in order to arrive at a lasting and long-term resolution. The Russian Federation stands ready to provide the necessary assistance in these efforts. Thank you.
感谢。
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. First and foremost, I wish to thank the IAEA, Mr. Rafael Grossi, for his briefing. His briefing provides us with an alert about the risks of further regional escalation, which needs to be avoided at all costs, and his remarks serve as a reminder of the gravity of any attack against targeting nuclear facilities. We thank the IAEA for its professionalism, for its vigilance, and for the way that it's carried out its duties. France condemns in the strongest terms this drone attack, which on the 17th of May last targeted the nuclear facility of Baraka. These attacks must cease immediately. We reaffirm our full solidarity with the United Arab Emirates, and we stand ready to contribute to the defense of their territory. France recalls our commitment to the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, and the security of all of our partners in the Middle East. Our Foreign Minister, Mr. Jean-Noël Barrot, reaffirmed this solidarity during his recent visit to the region. The attacks targeting operational civilian nuclear facilities and electricity provision systems, which are critical for their safe and secure operations, are liable to compromise nuclear safety and security. We call upon all parties to exercise restraint and to comply with their obligations in this area, particularly those emanating from international humanitarian law. I also wish to stress France's support for the independent and impartial operations of the IAEA and the Director General. Their role is all the more necessary at present for the promotion of best practices in terms of nuclear safety and security in areas of armed conflict, and to see to it that the international non-proliferation regime is complied with. And in this regard, we reiterate our full support for the 7 pillars and the 5 principles that were set out by the Director General before the Council in 2022. The Middle East, once again, is facing a dangerous threat of escalation. In this context, we recall our conviction that respect for international law and seeking a political resolution alone can guarantee the restoration of peace and stability in the region. There's a critical need in this regard to respect the ceasefire in the entire region, both in Iran and in Lebanon, and to seek to achieve de-escalation. France calls for a lasting de-escalation of tensions in the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the immediate, unconditional, and unfettered reopening of this international maritime route in accordance with the principles of the law of the sea. As part of the Franco-British initiative, which enjoys the support of some 30 countries, we will continue our work to plan a peaceful and mutual defensive escort mission, which, once conditions allow, will contribute to guaranteeing freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. Beyond that, France reiterates our unstinting commitment to a diplomatic solution to the Iranian crisis. Our position has been clear for more than 20 years. Only a negotiated, robust, and lasting solution can guarantee that Iran never gains access to nuclear weapons, and this is the only way to deal with threats linked to its ballistic program and its regional destabilization activities. France stands ready to contribute. Thank you.
国代表的发言。
I thank the representative of France. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
President, I have the honor of issuing this statement on behalf of the A3, namely Liberia, Somalia, and my own country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The A3 wish to thank Mr. Rafael Mariano Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We thank him for his particularly useful briefing. We wish to seize this opportunity to reiterate our full support for the efforts undertaken undertaken by the United Nations and the International Atomic Energy Agency in order to preserve the integrity of the international regime of nuclear safety and security. Mr. President, the A3 are gravely concerned by how the situation in the Middle East is unfolding. Significant efforts are currently underway to achieve a sustainable de-escalation after weeks of fighting. However, the drone attack which targeted the nuclear facilities in Barakah in the United Arab Emirates is a dangerous risk in terms of how it could imperil the precarious balance established by the Islamabad talks, and this in a regional context which is incredibly fragile and marked by constant volatility. The A3 condemn this attack and express their solidarity with the states of the Gulf region as well as with their people who have been affected by these current tensions. President, the A3 recalls that nuclear safety and security must, under all circumstances, be preserved and cannot be compromised. This includes in times of tension or armed conflict. Nuclear facilities and other installations crucial for nuclear safety must never become targets in view of the threat that would pose if damage were done to these facilities. Consequently, such facilities enjoy specific protection under international humanitarian law. We underscore the crucial importance of protecting these civilians exposed to such risks as well as civilian infrastructure. We also underscore the need to refrain from targeting in war nuclear facilities which have been placed under IAEA safeguards in accordance with relevant decisions of the IAEA and with the decisions and resolutions of the UN Security Council, as well as in accordance with all relevant provisions of international law, including the United Nations Charter itself. Mr. President, any additional escalation in the Gulf region is liable to sow further instability that would have significant consequences for regional security as well as for the global economy. The A3 remain convinced that no lasting solution can possibly emerge from an armed confrontation or from any escalation. Only frank, sincere commitment to dialogue and de-escalation will make it possible to restore calm. The A3 consequently urges all parties to exercise the utmost restraint to avoid any escalation liable to further worsen the regional situation and to continue in good faith discussions which recently began in order to achieve a genuine and lasting peace, which it is incumbent upon us all to preserve. President, to conclude, the A3 wish to reaffirm their willingness to support all efforts, both within the Council and alongside regional and international partners, in order to facilitate a peaceful, inclusive and lasting solution to the situation in the Middle East. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, President. I would also like to thank Director General Grossi for his briefing. Pakistan strongly condemns the drone attack on the Barakah nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates on 17th May. Pakistan stands in complete solidarity with the government and the brotherly people of the UAE in the wake of this heinous attack and reiterates its full support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all friendly countries of the region. Pakistan also condemns in the strongest possible terms the drone attacks carried out against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which constitute a serious violation of the kingdom's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and appear to be an attempt to further undermine the regional peace and stability. We stand in solidarity with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and reaffirm our full and unwavering support for the kingdom's security, peace and prosperity. President, any and all targeting of nuclear facilities constitute a grave violation of international law, including international humanitarian law, the United Nations Charter, and the fundamental principles of nuclear safety and security enshrined in the statute and various resolutions of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Pakistan has previously articulated its clear position on this issue in the Council, and we reiterate that nuclear installations must never be targeted under any circumstances. The inviolability of civilian nuclear infrastructure is a well-established international norm and must be upheld without exception. Increasing incidents of attacks against nuclear facilities demand serious introspection and action to address the legal, safety, and security implications of such attacks. And in addition to serious violation of international law, attacks against nuclear facilities pose a grave danger to the safety of populations in the region. As a neighboring country, we remain seriously concerned about this dangerous trend. Such reckless actions carry potentially catastrophic and irreversible consequences for human life, the environment, and regional as well as global peace and security. President, the unacceptable drone attacks against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and against the UAE's Barakah nuclear power plant are yet another reminder of the imperative to definitively stop the ongoing tensions and confrontation in the region. Pakistan calls upon all parties to exercise maximum restraint, fulfill their obligations under international law and international humanitarian law, and avoid any actions that could further escalate tensions with consequences extending far beyond the region. And as also underlined by DG Grossi and other Council colleagues, dialogue and diplomacy consistent with the principles and purposes of the UN Charter remain the only viable path toward de-escalation and lasting peace and stability in the region. It is in this context that Pakistan has been making sincere efforts to facilitate diplomatic engagement between the concerned parties. And we thank the parties and all our partners, as well as the UN Secretary General, for supporting these efforts. Let me reiterate, there is no alternative to diplomacy and dialogue for peaceful resolution of disputes. Pakistan will continue to play its constructive role to facilitate dialogue between the parties for a fruitful outcome. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me also thank Director General Grossi for the informative briefing and welcome the representative of the UAE to the meeting today. First of all, Denmark strongly condemns the drone attacks on the UAE near the Barakah nuclear power plant in Abu Dhabi. These reckless attacks pose a threat to the safety of the entire region. We stand in full solidarity with the UAE. Mr. President, we are relieved that reports show that the radiation level at Barakah have remained at normal levels and that no injuries were reported from the attack. We recognize the important role of the IAEA in monitoring the situation and welcome the constant contact between the IAEA and the UAE authorities. However, attacks near nuclear facilities entail great risks for the population as well as for the environment. We remain deeply concerned about military activity that threatens nuclear safety. We call for maximum military restraint near nuclear sites and other installations important for nuclear safety to avoid the danger of a nuclear accident. Mr. President, while this attack near the Barakah plant is the focus of today's meeting, it's taking place in the context of a deeply concerning wider regional conflict across the Middle East. Since the beginning of May, we have seen renewed Iranian attacks against the Gulf countries. Denmark strongly condemns these attacks, which are completely unacceptable, and they must stop immediately. The risk of wider conflict and increased regional destabilization is clear, and it's deeply worrying. Denmark calls on all actors to work towards peaceful resolution in line with international law, and as many speakers before me have said. And we call for the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 2817. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for this statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank Director General Grossi for his briefing, and I welcome the participation of the permanent representative of the UAE at our meeting today. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Dr. Grossi and staff at the International Atomic Energy Agency for their professionalism and dedication in delivering essential work on nuclear safety, security and safeguards, often in the most challenging circumstances. The United Kingdom condemns this attack on the Baraka nuclear facility in the United Arab Emirates in the strongest terms. This was a reckless attack which could have had severe consequences for nuclear safety and for regional security. We welcome reports that radiation levels remain normal and that no injuries have been reported. We call on all parties to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure and to apply, respect and uphold international law, including the UN Charter and international humanitarian law. Such actions risk further escalation at a time of heightened tensions. President, looking to the wider region, we welcome action from this Council, led by the Gulf, to address increased tensions and instability. Resolution 2817 is clear. Iran must cease all attacks, including in the Strait of Hormuz. These attacks continue to threaten global security and prosperity, increase economic pressure on the most vulnerable, and put civilian lives in danger. The United Kingdom stands firmly alongside the UAE and all our partners in the region in support of their sovereignty, security, and protection of critical national infrastructure. We will continue to pursue all diplomatic efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, including here in the Security Council, while providing practical support to help defend our friends in the Gulf. Colleagues, the situation in the Middle East remains fragile. We all want to see a de-escalation of tensions in the region. Together, we must do all we can to support and sustain the ceasefire. We call on Iran to engage meaningfully in negotiations and to move towards lasting and sustainable peace. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank you as President for convening this meeting, and we recognize the presence of the representatives of the UAE. Those representatives honor us today with their presence. We are also grateful for the address delivered by the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, at this meeting. The recent events, which are still under investigation, increase our concerns around the situation in the Middle East, which remains unstable. In spite of the fact that a fragile ceasefire remains in place, hotbeds of tension remain, and we are witnessing growing uncertainty around how the conflict will play out and about its humanitarian, political and security consequences for the region and the international community. International law, the United Nations Charter, the fundamental principles of nuclear safety and security, and the relevant resolutions of the International Atomic Energy Agency have clearly established that nuclear facilities and civilian nuclear infrastructure must not be attacked. They must never be attacked by anyone under any circumstances. That has just been confirmed by Director General Grossi in the most lucid possible terms. We heard just that from his presentation. This is because any action, particularly any military endeavour which compromises the nuclear security of those facilities, constitutes a grave risk for civilians, the environment and regional stability. There would be possible consequences which would transcend the borders of the states involved in any conflict. As such, the implementation of the prohibition on these attacks cannot be selective, nor must it be selective. If this instability and confrontation continues to rumble on, we will see uncertainty in the region increase, and we will see the risks to peace and international security exacerbated, and that will have potential repercussions on global energy stability, the safety of waterways, and the smooth and proper functioning of energy supply chains. We stand in solidarity with the United Arab Emirates, with their sovereignty and territorial integrity. Against this backdrop, we reiterate the importance of exercising the utmost caution and restraint, and of avoiding any actions which may cause existing tensions to rise further still. President, moreover, we here reaffirm the value of dialogue, diplomacy, and full, stringent respect for international law as crucial means with which to shore up regional stability and preserve international peace and security. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to thank the Presidency for convening this urgent meeting so promptly. I also thank the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, for his briefing today. First and foremost, Latvia reiterates its steadfast solidarity with the UAE and all our partners in the Gulf. We strongly and unequivocally condemn Iran's numerous unprovoked attacks against countries in the region. And any and all strikes against civilian nuclear infrastructure are completely unacceptable and illegal. The reckless attack on the Baraka power plant in the UAE represents a dangerous escalation in the ongoing conflict. A strike on a nuclear power plant poses immense risks to civilians, with the potential to inflict far-reaching long-term consequences to the region. As stated by the Secretary General, it is a clear violation of international law and international humanitarian law, which provides special protection to nuclear installations, precisely because of the potentially devastating consequences in cases of damage. Mr. President, immediate de-escalation and an immediate cessation of all hostilities are urgently needed. The ceasefire must be observed by all parties, including various proxy elements. We support continued negotiations to find a sustainable solution to security concerns around Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missile program, and the regime's destabilizing activities in the region and beyond. The global disruptions stemming from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran continue to undermine global energy and food security and harm those most vulnerable around the globe. And the latest attack on the UAE is a stark reminder of the need for dialogue and negotiated peace. This attack against a nuclear power plant in the UAE once again illustrates the profound similarities between the unprovoked strikes against the Gulf and those perpetrated by Russia against Ukraine's civilian nuclear energy infrastructure. Russian aggression and hostile actions in Ukraine's nuclear energy infrastructure objects threaten the whole Europe with radiological disasters of unimaginable consequences too. Latvia reaffirms its call for the protection of civilians, civilian nuclear installations, and freedom of navigation, and the need for this Council's unity in the face of such blatant violations of international law. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of China. Colleagues, I thank Director General Grossi for his briefing and welcome the representative of the United Arab Emirates to this meeting. Recently, facilities at the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates were attacked by drones. Although the incident did not cause any injuries or any impact on radiation safety levels, this dangerous and irresponsible act has sounded an alarm for the international community. China expresses its grave concern over the incident, opposes armed attacks on peaceful nuclear facilities, and calls on all parties to abide by the international law, including the Convention on Nuclear Safety, and to effectively safeguard the security of nuclear power plants. The sovereignty, security, and the territorial integrity of countries in the Middle East and the Gulf must be fully respected, and civilians and civilian objects must be protected. Colleagues, as long as armed conflict continues, the safety risks it poses to regional nuclear facilities will persist. The current war in the Middle East originated from the illegal military attacks by the United States and Israel against Iran. Since its outbreak, the conflict has inflicted severe losses on the peoples of countries across the region, including Iran and the Gulf states, severely disrupted global economic development, and harmed the shared interests of the international community. This war should never have happened. The sooner a way out is found, the better it will serve the interests of both the United States and Iran, as well as the countries in the region and the world at large. I wish to make 3 points. First, there is a strong call for cessation of hostilities, and any resumption of fighting must be avoided. For some time now, the United States and Iran have, on the whole, maintained a ceasefire, but the risk of escalation remains. At this critical juncture of a transition from war to peace, all parties must exercise maximum restraint, uphold the ceasefire arrangements, refrain from irresponsible, threatening rhetorics and military adventurism, and make every effort to prevent a relapse into conflict and further escalation of tensions. The international community should send a clear and unequivocal message opposing any actions that undermine the ceasefire or escalate confrontation. Second, military solution offers no way out. Dialogue and negotiation are the right path forward. The ceasefire between the United States and Iran and their search for a negotiated settlement have been welcomed by regional countries and the international community. China encourages both sides to stay committed to a political solution and to continue resolving differences, including on the nuclear question, through negotiations with a view to reaching a solution that accommodates the concerns of all parties. China commends Pakistan for its mediation efforts and supports all parties in reaching at an early date a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire so as to, at the soonest, restore peace and stability in the Gulf and the broader Middle East, and lay the groundwork for a sustainable regional security architecture. Third, priority should be given to solving pressing issues and preventing the spread of negative effects. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz is a demonstration of the spillover of the conflict. Disruptions to this vital shipping lane have severely affected global supply chains, international trade order, the energy security, with countries of the global south bearing significant livelihood costs. China advocates reopening the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible on the basis of maintaining the ceasefire, and it believes that the fundamental solution lies in achieving a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire. We call on all parties concerned to respond promptly to the calls of the international community by taking proactive measures to restore normal navigation through this international waterway. We welcome the UN initiative to establish a dedicated task force on the Strait of Hormuz while supporting a greater role to be played by the United Nations. Colleagues, since the outbreak of the conflict, China has been actively working to end hostilities and promote peace. President Xi Jinping has put forward 4 propositions on safeguarding and promoting peace and stability in the Middle East. China and Pakistan have issued a 5-point initiative for restoring peace and stability in the Gulf and Middle East region. China will continue to stay committed to the spirit of President Xi's 4-point proposition and work with the international community to play a constructive role in bringing an early end to hostilities and to restoring peace and development in the Middle East. I resume my function as President of the Council, and I give the floor to the representatives of the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President, I thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for requesting this emergency meeting, and I appreciate the swift response by China as President of the Security Council. I also thank Director General Grossi for his briefing on the heinous attack on the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. The International Atomic Energy Agency's role in upholding the global safeguards regime is indispensable. Mr. President, the UAE condemns in the strongest terms the unlawful, unprovoked terrorist attack targeting the vicinity of the Baraka nuclear power plant, which resulted in a contained fire at an electrical generator located outside the inner perimeter of the facility. The deliberate targeting of civilian objects is a flagrant violation of international law, and attacks on nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes are particularly egregious. International humanitarian law provides special protection for nuclear facilities because their damage and destruction could have grave consequences, endangering civilian lives, risking radiological contamination, inflicting long-term environmental damage, and disrupting essential services, consequences that extend well beyond national borders. The attack on Baraka constitutes a dangerous escalation in an already volatile regional environment and seeks to threaten and undermine the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of the United Arab Emirates. Threats and attacks of this nature are a red line for the UAE, and we reserve our full and inherent right to protect our territory and population in accordance with international law. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to underline the strength of the safety and security systems in place at Baraka. The plant was designed, licensed, and is operated in accordance with the highest international standards of nuclear safety, security, and safeguards. Its multiple layers of protection are intended to ensure the safe and secure production of clean electricity under a wide range of conditions. In this attack, there were no injuries, nor was there radiological release. The Baraka nuclear power plant remains safe, stable, and operational, supplying up to 25% of the UAE's clean electricity. This plant produces more than 40 terawatt-hours of energy annually, powering our homes, hospitals, and industries. However, the absence of catastrophic consequences should not diminish the gravity of this attack. The UAE underscores the importance of the IAEA's 7 indispensable pillars for ensuring nuclear safety and security during armed conflict, and in particular, the principle that the physical integrity of nuclear facilities must be preserved at all times and must never be jeopardized. Mr. President, my government has confirmed that the drone attacks targeting civilian and critical infrastructure over the past 48 hours, including on the Baraka nuclear power plant, originated from Iraqi territory. This brazen attack is not an isolated incident, but occurs in a wider regional context in which persistent cross-border attacks by one state and its proxies have pushed the region toward heightened escalation and dangerous confrontation. The region cannot continue to be pulled toward deeper instability by terrorists and extremists, threatening civilians, critical infrastructure, international shipping, and now nuclear safety. The Security Council must ensure that such attacks do not continue with impunity. Failure to act would risk normalizing such attacks and eroding the very principles this Council is entrusted to uphold. An attack directed at or in the vicinity of a peaceful civilian nuclear facility demands a clear, united, and consequential response from this Council. Mr. President, the United Arab Emirates reiterates that peaceful nuclear facilities must never become targets of attack under any circumstances. Protecting such facilities is a shared international responsibility, essential to preserving nuclear safety, security, and confidence in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.